of Israel, known as Yom Ha'atzmaut. During the past year, Israel has faced many challenges: a new government, a wave of terror attacks within Israel's borders, and a war in Gaza. But for Israel, these challenges are nothing new. During the over 7 decades of independence, Israel has had achievements as well as failures. The country is made up of different cultures, faiths, and ethnicities. Israeli society is as diverse as ever, and sometimes it seems that the various parts are very far away from each other. At other times, a sense of unity and belonging dominates. We visited 4 people who came from what seemed like different worlds, but something intertwines their stories growing up in and with the State of Israel. They saw the country change, grow, and combat challenges in the last 7 decades. And in this documentary, My Israel, made by Karmit Mocho and Shelley Barkai, we bring the perspective of what happened to Israel.
בארץ ישראל קם העם היהודי.
לאחר שהוגלה העם מארצו בכוח הזרוע, שמר לה אמונים בכל ארצות פזוריו, ולא חדל מתפילה ומתקווה לשוב לארצו ולחדש בתוכה את חירותו המדינית.
מדינת ישראל תקיים שוויון זכויות
חברתי ומדיני גמור לכל אזרחיה בלי הבדל דת, גזע, מין, תבטיח חופש דת, מצפון, לשון, חינוך ותרבות, תשמור על המקומות הקדושים של כל הדתות ותהיה נאמנה לעקרונותיה של
מגילת האומות המאוחדות. אנו קוראים אל העם היהודי בכל התפוצות
להתלכד סביב היישוב בעלייה ובבניין ולעמוד לימינו במערכות הגדולות עד הגשמת שאיפת הדורות
לגאולת ישראל. אנו מושיטים יד שלום
ושכנות טובה לכל המדינות השכנות ועמיהן, וקוראים להם לשיתוף פעולה ועזרה הדדית עם העם העברי העצמאי בארצו. מדינת ישראל מוכנה לתרום חלקה במאמץ משותף
לקדמת המזרח התיכון כולו.
I'm Mohammad Masawi, born on August 14th, 1942, before the establishment of the state. I grew up in an agricultural family.
So first and foremost, I'm a Sabre. So I was born in Israel before the birth of the State of Israel. I was born in the year 1945. I know that I was born after World War II. It makes a big difference. I feel that the words from Holocaust to revival live through me.
I'm Shlomo Tweezer. They called me Momi when I was little. I was born on May 15th, 1948, and my mother says that the day she went to the hospital, they took her by horse and cart. That's when she saw the Modharat, the demonstrations by local residents, protesting the recognition of the State of Israel.
I was born on September 29th, 1948, to Bella and Bumi, co-founders of Kibbutz Barkai. I should note that Kibbutz Barkai was founded and named when they were still in Bucharest, Romania.
הקשישים.
Women and the elderly took their meager belongings and began leaving the yeshuv because it started to be a real risk.
כי התחיל להיות סיכון של ממש. זאת אומרת, מקומיים.
The locals took up arms and resisted with the support of Syrian volunteers who came to assist them in their war, and the Israeli army came from the southwestern side of the village. And villagers went to Kfar Ara in the east and later dispersed in Kuwait, Amman, Saudi Arabia, all over the world.
אז הכיוון היה ערה. כפר ערה במזרח. אחר כך התפזרו, חלק בכווית.
The Palestinians dispersed in an amazing way because they had no home left, so they went looking for a place.
הפלסטינים התפזרו בצורה מדהימה, כי לא נשאר להם בית, אז הם הלכו חיפשו מקום.
הבית שאנחנו עכשיו עומדים על ידו הוא
The house we're standing beside was, before the kibbutz, a Khan Inn where the Abdel Hadi family lived.
המקום הזה נמצא, השפיץ.
This place is at the tip of the partition plan, so it was very important that Kibbutz Bakai be founded in order to take this position. But this place was really taken.
אבל באמת המקום הזה נכבש.
בין תושבי כפר קרע או המנהיגות המקומית.
Between the residents of Kafar Kara and the local leadership and Yeshuv leaders in the area, there was a trusting, close relationship regardless of the war, even before the war. Then they contacted the army leadership and said, "Gentlemen, we're entitled to return to the village. We have no interest in continuing the struggle or the war." And in an unwritten agreement, with the turning of a blind eye, the residents of Kafar Kara began to return.
תושבי כפר קרע התחילו לחזור.
הגענו לארץ.
We arrived in Israel, we were given a bed, a mattress, but not everyone got one. We got 4 or 5 beds and boxes of combat rations, and my father was given something like 25 cents and an immigration certificate. That's when the struggle began.
בתקופה ההיא
In those days, children were also adults. In those days, we didn't cry about those things. We didn't know the concept of saying, I don't want to. The kibbutz decided, and I was just a boy. Was I going to make trouble for my parents? No, they had enough trouble as it was.
והיו להם מספיק צרות גם ככה.
My father was a painter. He'd come home to my mother at 5 p.m. She'd prepare a bowl with hot water for him to soak his feet. When he was done, he'd sit at the head of the table, get his food first, and we'd sit around him and eat. Sometimes we ate bread with a little oil, with sugar, with some tomatoes. We ate what there was. We weren't spoiled. We thanked God for whatever there was to eat, and we were happy.
At home, I got the love of the state of Israel, and the climax was going to the parade, to the march, like wearing white shirts and knowing that this is our pride, that this is our best manifestation of Jewish independence.
בין תושבי כפר קרע או המנהיגות המקומית.
Between the residents of Kafar Kara and the local leadership and Yeshuv leaders in the area, there was a trusting, close relationship regardless of the war, even before the war.
Sometimes it's tough to get past all the noise and get to the heart of the story. Even tougher to make sense of it all. And that's where we come in. I'm David Matlin, and each weekday I'll take on the most important topics, breaking down the issues so you can decide for yourself. Zoom in each weekday here at I-24 News.
We're on the inside of political and religious passions in Jerusalem, breaking down the financial trends shaping the global economy, giving you key context, not just headlines, with the stories from Israel that touch the U.S. and those across the region with impact far beyond its borders. Catch the rundown where the Middle East meets the world.
By midnight tonight, thieves will have stolen 2,400 vehicles across the U.S. today. So when you buy your next car, ask your dealer for Recover. With Recover, you'll always be able to find a forgotten parking spot or know if your car gets towed or moved without your permission. And most importantly, you'll be able to easily share your car's location with police so they can recover it for you. Stay in control and protect what's yours. Ask your dealer for Recover today.
Between the residents of Kfar Kara and the local leadership and Yeshuv leaders in the area, there was a trusting, close relationship regardless of the war, even before the war. Then they contacted the army leadership and said, "Gentlemen, we're entitled to return to the village. We have no interest in continuing the struggle or the war." And in an unwritten agreement, with the turning of a blind eye, the residents of Kfar Kara began to return.
תושבי כפר קרע התחילו לחזור.
הגענו לארץ.
We arrived in Israel, we were given a bed, a mattress, but not everyone got one. We got 4 or 5 beds and boxes of combat rations, and my father was given something like 25 cents and an immigration certificate. That's when the struggle began.
בתקופה ההיא
In those days, children were also adults. In those days, we didn't cry about those things. We didn't know the concept of saying, I don't want to. The kibbutz decided, and I was just a boy. Was I going to make trouble for my parents? No, they had enough trouble as it was.
והיו להם מספיק צרות גם ככה.
My father was a painter. He'd come home to my mother at 5 p.m. She'd prepare a bowl with hot water for him to soak his feet. When he was done, he'd sit at the head of the table, get his food first, and we'd sit around him and eat. Sometimes we ate bread with a little oil, with sugar, with some tomatoes. We ate what there was. We weren't spoiled. We thanked God for whatever there was to eat, and we were happy.
At home, I got the love of the state of Israel, and the climax was going to the parade, to the march, like wearing white shirts and knowing that this is our pride, that this is our best manifestation of Jewish independence.
One Independence Day in Beersheba, I saw the Border Police Corps. Back then, it was a voluntary service. The entire group was barely 40 people. They all had mustaches. They were real men. I said to myself, that's where I'm going. I volunteered. I got to the army and said, now I'll prove myself. So I ran fast, and I took the lead during stretcher-carrying marches. Although my Hebrew wasn't great, I had leadership. They sent me to a sergeant's course, and I was the outstanding cadet. 4 months later, they sent me to the officer's school. A Moroccan officer from Dalet neighborhood. You know what that is? You can't imagine today there are lieutenants, captains, majors. Today it's become, but back then?
גולני היה מאוכלוסיות מורכב.
The Golani Brigade was made up of people from lower socioeconomic levels, and they took our entire class.
והם לקחו את כל המחזור שלנו,
Those who failed the flight school to Golani, all of us. And they stated it clearly, we want future Golani commanders.
עתודה פיקודית לגולני, אבל היו לא מעט קיבוצניקים.
There were quite a few kibbutzniks, moshavniks, and people from the upper classes. And it's important to note that they were mostly Ashkenazi.
צריך להגיד, היו בעיקר אשכנזים.
הממשל הצבאי היה כתם, ונותר כתם בהיסטוריה של מדינת ישראל.
The martial law was and remains a stain on Israeli history. I remember being arrested inside the law faculty in Jerusalem at the Hebrew University. There was an event in Baka el-Gharbiyya marking the Eid al-Adha holiday. Someone used the stage to make political declarations. We are your soldiers, Abu Khaled. They're referring to al-Nasser, and everyone in attendance, myself included, was arrested by the Israeli police. I'll never forget it. An officer came in carrying handcuffs during a lecture on constitutional law. Eventually I got to court. That is, I was taken to Pardes Hana on a public bus in handcuffs, which was an unforgettable trauma.
זה טראומה שלא תשכח.
Everything was nice, cozy, and good. And yet, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, united to annihilate the state of Israel. Abdul Nasser, the Egyptian president, announced already that he is annihilating Tel Aviv.
They told me to establish a border police recon unit. I handpicked them. It was an honor for me. But there's one thing that's a shame. I wanted my father to be able to see his son, who came from Morocco in sandals, becoming a captain. They called me Captain Sliman in Hebron. From after the Six-Day War, following the capture of Hebron, I stayed there. Even after the Yom Kippur War, I returned to Hebron. I was there almost 17 years. You could say I had Jordanian citizenship.
The Six-Day War, and after 6 years, the Yom Kippur War shook me to a different planet. When up to the Six-Day War, I was a good Israeli, a good wife, a good mother. This is what I wanted to be. And then, all of a sudden, against all odds, we found ourselves here. I became a very active member of the movement of Gush Emunim. And the first thing that I did was to establish a group to start a new community on the western hills of Samaria, overlooking the coastal plain.
We think we should settle every place, and we also support settlements in the Jordan Valley and in other places in Israel.
את
It was an opportunity to meet with family from beyond the Green Line. That is, my uncles live in the Nur HaShams refugee camp near Tulkarem, and it was an opportunity to meet them, to travel to Nablus, to Hebron, to East Jerusalem, and to meet other relatives from beyond the border.
כאן שידורי ישראל מירושלים. שלום רב וגמר חתימה טובה. דובר צה"ל מוסר כי סמוך לשעה 2 פתחו הכוחות המצריים והסוריים בהתקפה בסיני.
הגיעה לנו מלחמת יום כיפור, והשאירה את חותמה בנו, תורה מאוד...
And then we had the Yom Kippur War, which left a very drastic mark on us. We were the first force to reach the canal, and what we saw, I can still see it now. Along a shelter, there were bodies covered with blankets. You could see the shoes sticking out, and you knew they weren't Egyptians. You knew they were ours. And in the end, when we hit the mine, in that terrible place, we finally stuck our heads out. I was the driver. We stuck our heads out. You could see the scattered tanks and APCs, and you knew they were ours. And each one of us made his vows. What he'll do if he gets out alive. And I admit I didn't fulfill my vow. I said I'd go to synagogue and say a blessing. No, just like I got married in a civil wedding, and my father was a great agnostic, so I said, listen, there are miracles, but it's certain they come from above.
אז אמרתי, תשמע, יש ניסים, לא בטוח שזה בא מלמעלה.
Was my immediate translation, interpretation. God wants us to move. And at that moment, I decided to get involved in what you see me doing now. To see that the Jewish nation is climbing up the mountains of Samaria, establishing communities, establishing towns and big cities.
Separation of religion and state is imperative and will make our lives easier. It's the same in other Muslim countries where the imam's people or religious people have the country by the throat and force it into a way of life that is not right for the times or the realities of today.
Religion and state, I'd see them as one, definitely. Everything in the state of Israel is based on our religion. And also in the Declaration of Independence, Ben-Gurion, who was considered a secular Jew, he said that we were yearning to return to the historical land of the Jews. We were praying to return to Zion. These are pure religious terms.
My faith helped me be stronger because it enabled me to respect people, respect the individual, no matter if he is an Arab, a Jew, anyone. I respect everyone, and that's my strength. And I put my faith in those around me. Because I didn't lose my brothers for nothing. I don't want to blame the country. I want to blame myself too. When I became a general, I forgot, and I'll tell my brother, when they bring you to me, I'll put you in the worst isolation cell there is. And I meant it. It hurt me because I told him, you're in my way. Because I had a plan to reach a certain rank. And I knew that, in terms of security clearance, I wouldn't be cleared as long as I had a brother who was, shall we say, in charge of the neighborhood. The leader of the neighborhood. And when he decided to stop being the leader, he was murdered by an underling. He was run through with a stake. My other brother stayed on, saying they forced him to stay until his brother was run through. And he saw his brother die, and he'd tell me, I respect you, brother. You be good. I'm very sorry. I'm offending your honor. I understood him. People don't just fall into drugs or into a life of crime. We, as a society, sometimes push these people into certain neighborhoods and say, let them suffocate. That's wrong. I moved to a good neighborhood, to the other side. I know the pain because I lost both of my brothers there.
It's a living, breathing organism that pulsates through millennia. Touch it, listen to it, smell it, taste it. Experience the Holy Land like never before. Holy Land Uncovered, every Sunday, only on I-24 News.
The I-24 News team of talented correspondents are working hard for you. They're in the markets, on the streets, in the battlefields, getting the pulse of the story. Tune in for Beyond the Headlines to see how the top stories of the week are affecting real people. No commentary, no debate, just the best stories presented by our best journalists.
Discover I-24 News Radio. Now you can listen to I-24 News anywhere, anytime, for free. I-24 News Radio is the audio live stream of the television network with world headlines every 30 minutes starting from 7 a.m. Tune in for top news, magazines editions while in the car, in your office. Join us from your smartphone, tablet, or desktop to stay connected in the Middle East and around the world. Don't wait any longer. Head to our website or mobile application and click on I-24 News Radio to subscribe.
Welcome to the I-24 News Desk.
Now more details on a developing story.
Breaking news at this hour.
It is history in the making.
When news breaks in the Middle East and around the world, our team of experienced journalists are here around the clock
to keep you up to date with the news of the day.
Where it happens, when it happens.
Stay tuned and stay informed.
Every day on the hour.
The heart of the new Middle East beats on I-24 News.
Imagine being able to see into the future.
What innovations will change the world as we know it? Join us as we meet the people changing our planet and discover the inventions shaping tomorrow.
Israel Business Beat, Sundays and Wednesdays, 9:30 p.m. GMT.
Because I didn't lose my brothers for nothing. I don't want to blame the country. I want to blame myself too. When I became a general, I forgot, and I'll tell my brother, when they bring you to me, I'll put you in the worst isolation cell there is. And I meant it. It hurt me because I told him, you're in my way. Because I had a plan to reach a certain rank. And I knew that, in terms of security clearance, I wouldn't be cleared as long as I had a brother who was, shall we say, in charge of the neighborhood. The leader of the neighborhood. And when he decided to stop being the leader, he was murdered by an underling. He was run through with a stake. My other brother stayed on, saying they forced him to stay until his brother was run through. And he saw his brother die, and he'd tell me, I respect you, brother. You be good. I'm very sorry. I'm offending your honor. I understood him. People don't just fall into drugs or into a life of crime. We, as a society, sometimes push these people into certain neighborhoods and say, let them suffocate. That's wrong. I moved to a good neighborhood, to the other side. I know the pain because I lost both of my brothers there.
There's no doubt that the kibbutz movement, I'm afraid to say that it was elitist, but it was differentiated. Most of the time we were employers, and they were the employees. I'm talking about the area around here.
Among us Sephardic Jews, there are those who've reached certain positions, but we were scared to go back down and help these people because we wanted to be like the other society. They're my brothers. The Ashkenazim are my brothers. But they were taken care of. So I wanted to get them. I came without a high school diploma, without an education. I came here. I studied at Amal. They sent me to those disturbed kids to study mechanics once a day, and I worked all week. I went to work as a mechanic. In those buildings you see there, I'd finish my mechanic work and go with a carpenter installing door frames. And I'd come home in the evening and give my father the money so we could all eat together.
After completing my high school studies, I entered the Hebrew University, the law faculty. I completed my studies and became a lawyer in 1970. I was the first lawyer in the area, the first Arab lawyer.
מבחינה אחת, במישור הפרסונלי, זה אולי סיפור הצלחה.
On a personal level, it may be a success story, but it's not representative because not everyone is like this. Not everyone gets to where I got, serving as a judge in Israel and serving as head of a diplomatic mission in Israel. But
ראש נציגות דיפלומטית בישראל. אבל המטרה היא בדרך כלל, אני אומר, לא לאלה שיודעים להסתדר.
Objective is not usually those who know how to manage. It's those who may fail that we need to look out for. Those who may get carried away, may find their way to a life of crime or drugs or criminal situations.
מצבים פליליים שיכולים לגרום נזק יותר מאשר תועלת בחברה.
To build a prison, you need 300 to 400 million shekels. Take those 300, 400 million shekels and invest them in the neighborhoods and in schools, and you'll prevent the need for another prison 20 years from now. That's the only way to fix society. A society that doesn't plan its social future will lose it.
I support opposition to the occupation. It is the right of the Arab-Palestinian people to oppose the occupation, but not through violence, rather through non-violent means. In my opinion, it is their exclusive and absolute right.
When there was the first Intifada and the second Intifada, or as we call it, the Oslo War, we never never left. We got stronger here. We had our casualties. People suffered. My son-in-law was murdered. And we never left. We never hesitated for a second.
האינתיפאדה השנייה יצרה מציאות קשה בתוך חברה ישראלית, אפילו אכזבה.
The second intifada created a harsh reality within Israeli society, even disappointment. The peace camp, for which we had such high hopes, was a disappointment. As an Israeli Arab, I am fearful for the well-being of Israeli soldiers who leave good homes, have values, and have to deal with an almost impossible reality at the checkpoints and other places.
במחסומים ובמקומות אחרים.
Went to elections here on this hill, was elected as the mayor of the place. And then I became the general secretary of the entire settlement movement, the settlement of Gush Emunim. And today I'm the general secretary of Nahala movement, which continues the ideological root of Gush Emunim. My dream is to have here 2 million Jews, 3 million Jews. And for a person who was born close to the birth of the State of Israel, I see the big growing change and changes in this area as something very realistic.
השאיפות הלאומיות.
The nationalistic, political, and radical aspiration casts a shadow over the day-to-day relationship because on one hand, on a day-to-day basis, the reality is good. People live together, work together. They create economic benefit, social benefit, cultural benefit. We just need to prevent such clashes because they cast a shadow over decades of joint productivity. There is a problem with politicians who, in order to survive, and I'm referring to both sides, incite, divide, and threaten the existence of minorities.
יש בעיה של פוליטיקאים שלמען הישרדותם, בשני הצדדים אגב, אני קורא לזה, הם גם מסיתים, גם משסים וגם מאיימים על קיומם של בני המיעוט.
Everything that you see around is Israel. And it was given as heritage to the 12 sons of Israel, of Yaakov. The other nations that were here or are here are guests. You have no chance to have any national state, not even autonomy, not any national autonomy in the land of the Jews.
We deal with the Jewish-Arab issue, and the message we want to convey in Givat Haviva is sit down and talk. Let's sit, let's talk, let's do everything together, from the understanding that if we aren't able to sit and talk, we won't be able to do things together, and we most likely will forever be fighting, and this place stands no chance.
People read the signs correctly. They want to become part of the Israeli society. However, in many matters, the path is unavailable to them. They're not integrated in all of the state systems, the government systems, and therefore they look for possible precedents.
IT Center is an IT software and consulting company that develops and supplies communication and security solutions for the service provider industry. Voices is our unified communications collection of products with a groundbreaking hybrid architecture that grants flexibility and virtually unlimited control From standard maintenance and support to specialized consulting, our offer can be customized to serve any size of organization. Working with us brings efficiency to all your communications. Every day, everywhere, everything connected.
We're on the inside of political and religious passions in Jerusalem, breaking down the financial trends shaping the global economy, giving you key context, not just headlines, with the stories from Israel that touch the U.S. and those across the region with impact far beyond its borders. Catch the rundown where the Middle East meets the world.
The Middle East. I-24 News is a witness. Our journalists live and breathe there every day. Get all the latest global news from our studios in Tel Aviv, New York, Washington, and Paris. Anytime, anywhere. Download the I-24 News app, available on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple, and Google stores. I-24 News, see beyond.
The nationalistic, political, and radical aspiration casts a shadow over the day-to-day relationship because on one hand, on a day-to-day basis, the reality is good. People live together, work together. They create economic benefit, social benefit, cultural benefit.
יש בעיה של פוליטיקאים שלמען הישרדותם, בשני הצדדים אגב אני קורא לזה, הם גם מסיתים, גם משסים וגם מאיימים על קיומם של בני המיעוט.
Everything that you see around is Israel. And it was given as heritage to the 12 sons of Israel, of Yaakov. The other nations that were here or are here are guests. You have no chance to have any national state, not even autonomy, not any national autonomy in the land of the Jews.
We deal with the Jewish-Arab issue, and the message we want to convey in Givat Haviva is sit down and talk. Let's sit, let's talk, let's do everything together, from the understanding that if we aren't able to sit and talk, we won't be able to do things together, and we most likely will forever be fighting, and this place stands no chance.
People read the signs correctly. They want to become part of the Israeli society. However, in many matters, the path is unavailable to them. They're not integrated in all of the state systems, the government systems, and therefore they look for possible precedents.
Politics means that there will always be weak people because the politicians advance on the backs of the weak. Come to Dalet neighborhood today, they're all Likudniks. What has the Likud done for them? I'm asking you, they're all Likudniks.
If you go with me now to Tel Aviv, you'll see the attitude of people in Tel Aviv to me. People love me. They know me from the TV, and they know my scarf and the way I look like a settler, and they know that my dedication of the land of Israel is the source of strength that has its impact on everything that is going on in Israel.
I'm a Leo, and they say that Leos are always walking on the edge. It is not by chance that I'm involved in almost every matter in Kafel Kala today. People put their faith in you because you devote yourself to action. They come to you in every matter and say, you're our partner, you lead. On the one hand, it's flattering, and on the other, I sometimes say, I hope I don't collapse, that I can stay on my feet.
I was an educator here during a time where educators weren't budgeted for. It was a part-time job. But I was here every day. I worked in education in 19 years with the Naale group, and I met with students and spoke with educators and so on. That's the thing, to educate. I honestly believe that proper education that comes from love is the key.
This is the toughest assignment I had because I rate the prisons by their levels, and Eshel prison is called super security. You have the hardest possible inmates and have to maneuver things so that they'll live in peace. Otherwise, they'll start stabbing each other, and that's the problem. But I loved it. It was in my blood. I wouldn't go home.
What does a family want? Whether they're Jewish or Arab, they all basically want to build a future for their children, to provide them with a good education, a place to live, and future economic stability. That is a people's mutual concern.
I thank God that I was born exactly in this very specific point in history. And more than that, I'm happy that I can affect so much things that have to do with the establishment of the state and with the development of the state of Israel.
Heaven is here, not there. This is heaven. We will define how this place, this heaven, will be. So as long as we behave badly, we are in hell. Behave well, respect others, that's heaven.
Singing also makes life interesting. I've been singing since I was 16. To my happiness or to my surprise, my wife Nina also sings, and I recently told her, what would happen if we couldn't sing? What would we do? That's our luck. It's a gift from above that we both sing.
And in this next part of High Definition, a tribute to the illegal immigration efforts of refugees leaving Europe after experiencing the Holocaust, with a goal to reach a safe haven in the newly emerged Zionist state. Zachavit Blumenfeld was born in an immigrant camp in Cyprus that was built by the British to hold Jewish refugees who were trying to reach Palestine. 12 camps like this were built between 1946 and 1948, holding over 50,000 Jews. Zachavit later found that her roots in Cyprus were more than a historical accident, and a bond was found between her and her Cypriot neighbors. I-24's Maël Ben Uliel reports.
Pendant les 3 années qui ont suivi la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, près de 70 000 Juifs survivants de la Shoah ont embarqué sur 65 bateaux, direction la Palestine mandataire. Des réfugiés qui ont embarqué sur de vieux rafiaux surchargés sans l'autorisation d'entrer en terre promise, car à l'époque, les Anglais qui administrent la région contrôlent l'immigration et imposent des quotas. Mais les Juifs commencent à arriver en nombre vers les côtes palestiniennes. Bien que les Britanniques permettent à quelques milliers d'entre eux d'immigrer légalement en Palestine, la plupart des Juifs sont placés dans des camps de détention. Comme celui d'Atlit, près de Haïfa. Établi par les Anglais dans les années 30 et transformé depuis les années 1980 en musée. C'est là que nous a donné rendez-vous Zahavit. Et pour cause, ses parents, rescapés de la Shoah, auraient très bien pu se retrouver dans ce camp après avoir quitté la Roumanie en 1947, dans l'espoir de commencer une nouvelle vie dans ce qui allait devenir l'État d'Israël quelques mois plus tard. Mais c'est à quelques 300 km d'Atlit, du côté de Chypre, que leur bateau finit par jeter l'ancre. Et c'est dans un des 12 camps de détention chypriotes mis en place par les Anglais dès 1946 que Zahavit a vu le jour, il y a presque 70 ans.
Cette couverture, c'est en fait celle qui m'entourait quand je suis arrivée en Israël. D'ailleurs, d'autres bébés avaient le même modèle de couverture et sont arrivés avec. Donc cette couverture est importante pour moi. Je l'ai même parfumée et j'ai pensé que ce serait bien qu'elle soit exposée ici, dans le musée du camp de détention d'Atlit.
Comme Zahavit, plus de 2000 bébés sont nés dans les camps de détention chypriotes à cette époque. En tout, plus de 52 000 réfugiés juifs n'ont pas eu d'autre choix que de transiter pendant de longs mois par ces camps. Le prix à payer, imposé par les Anglais pour contrer une immigration qu'ils considéraient comme illégale. C'est ce qu'on appelle l'aliabet, une alia clandestine mise en place par les habitants juifs déjà présents en Palestine mandataire. Une alia particulière donc qui fait partie intégrante de l'histoire de famille de Zahavit, souvent sollicité par les responsables du musée d'Atlit pour venir partager avec les plus jeunes ses souvenirs.
Chaque camp, il y avait un secrétariat et mon père était le secrétaire du camp où nous étions. Et cette photo a été prise dans le camp le jour où l'État d'Israël s'est créé. En haut ici, c'est écrit « Longue vie à l'État des Juifs ». C'est en fait dans les camps de détention que les gens sont devenus de vrais sionistes.
Ce n'est que quelques mois après la création de l'État d'Israël que les camps chypriotes ferment leurs portes. Et ce n'est qu'à ce moment-là que Zahavit et sa famille finissent enfin par arriver en Israël pour la première fois. Mais 70 ans après, Chypre reste tout de même le pays qu'il a vu naître. D'autant plus qu'à l'époque, les Chypriotes ont été d'une grande aide aux réfugiés juifs pour survivre aux conditions difficiles du camp, où il manquait de tout, mais aussi pour pouvoir s'y échapper avec l'aide d'organisations juives.
Pendant cette période, les Chypriotes ont été d'une grande aide pour les clandestins. Ils ont fait tout ce qu'ils pouvaient, mais leur plus grande aide était de les aider à s'échapper des camps.
C'est dans cet état d'esprit que Zahavit est retournée des dizaines de fois à Chypre sur les traces de son passé, où elle a tissé des liens très forts avec la petite île méditerranéenne. Mais en 1994, un autre événement fondateur va bouleverser la vie de Zahavit à jamais.
Tout a commencé en 1994, quand un médecin m'a annoncé un jour de beau temps que j'étais atteinte d'un cancer. On s'est occupé de moi, j'étais opérée et comme vous pouvez le voir, je suis aujourd'hui en bonne santé.
Et quelques années après, lors d'une visite de contrôle de routine à l'hôpital Shiba de Tel HaShomer, Zahavit tombe par hasard dans ce même lobby sur un couple chypriote.
Nous avons commencé à parler et c'est comme ça que tout a commencé en fait. À partir de là, je me suis portée volontaire ici à Shiba, dans le département de greffe de moelle osseuse, auprès des patients chypriotes.
Depuis, à chaque fois que des patients chypriotes viennent se faire soigner dans cet hôpital, et ils sont plusieurs dizaines chaque année, l'équipe médicale fait appel à Zahavit.
J'aide évidemment tous les patients, mais particulièrement ceux qui viennent de Chypre. Je leur retourne leur aide pour ce qu'ils ont fait. Cela les récompense de tout ce qu'ils nous ont donné.
Après 20 ans de bénévolat auprès de patients chypriotes, Zahavit est désormais prête à pardonner aux Britanniques.
J'ai été très longtemps énervée contre les Britanniques, car à cause d'eux, je ne suis pas née en Israël. Et à cause d'eux, mes parents et 52 000 autres personnes ont beaucoup souffert. Mais comme nous allons fêter les 70 ans d'Israël et aussi mon 70e anniversaire au passage, je me sens prête et entière avec moi-même pour me réconcilier avec les Britanniques. Je leur pardonne, mais jamais je n'oublierai.
En tout et pour tout, les Britanniques ont empêché l'alia de 120 000 Juifs à partir des années 30, jusqu'au jour de la création de l'État d'Israël. Une page de l'histoire qui restera gravée à jamais.
Thank you so much for watching this special Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's 74th anniversary episode. We really appreciate it, and we wish you a happy Yom Ha'atzmaut. I'm Emily Francis, and take care.
Just want answers on our essence, right? Linear points in time, past, present, future, and you should see the present as a present. But maybe the now is not a snapshot, but an entire film. Identity is not a prefix that is derived from interaction, from the ever-dynamic connections we're making. You can only go so far from the lens of the individual. The only way to grasp the greater world, you need to engage in discourse, global eye, where it's not about the being, but about the becoming.
Esta semana en News 24, una delegación argentina de alto rango visitó Israel por temas de agua, innovación y encuentros políticos fortaleciendo las relaciones bilaterales. Yossi Abadi, CEO del grupo Tenlot, impulsa la innovación, emprendimientos y desarrollo tecnológico en Latinoamérica. Procomer, la Oficina de Comercio de Costa Rica en Israel, organizó un desayuno de trabajo con empresarios israelíes y adelantaron que importarán piñas frescas a Israel. News 24, el magazine semanal en español de i24 News.
Breaking news again, but there's always more to the story, especially here in the Middle East.
Looks like the Middle East is always about to go to war. Or is it? What's really going on in the region? Well, unless you're actually here, you can't really tell.
Join us here at the beating heart of the new Middle East
to get a true perspective on what's really going on.
Middle East Now with Jacob Elon and Laura Sellier, weekday nights only on i24 News.
The heart of the new Middle East beats on i24 News.
The Middle East. I-24 News is a witness. Our journalists live and breathe there every day. Get all the latest global news from our studios in Tel Aviv, New York, Washington, and Paris. Anytime, anywhere. Download the i24 News app, available on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple, and Google stores. I-24 News, see beyond.
Welcome to the I-24 News Desk. I'm Sarah Shalala. We're coming to you live from our Tel Aviv studios now. So let's take a quick look at some of today's top stories. Israel is today celebrating its 74th Independence Day. Israelis are seen hitting beaches, parks, nature sites, and every other open space for barbecues and other festivities on this Thursday. An annual highlight too. Earlier, Air Force aircraft, including F-15, 16 and 35 fighter jets, flying over much of the country. It's a very iconic and popular feature of celebrations. And for the first time too, a flyby over the West Bank city of Hebron. And other events today, the annual International Bible Quiz in Jerusalem. And this year also sees the IDF return to its annual tradition of opening up major bases to visitors after events were suspended the last few years due to COVID-19. Well, let's go straight to the scene now where our I-24 News correspondent Erica Jackson is standing by for us in Tel Aviv. Erica, thanks so much for coming back on. Obviously, lots of cheer and joy in close proximity to you there and also around the country as a whole. How are you finding people celebrating there behind you on Independence Day?
Well, Sarah, it's been an incredibly exciting day here in Jaffa with families and people crowded around to catch a glimpse of the flyover put on by the Israeli Air Force, a spectacular show. And you can see people have been really excited and clapping and cheering anytime aircraft passes by. And the show has not only been visible here in Jaffa, but really through cities throughout the country from the north to the south. And we spoke with some people here today. Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
We have a strong Air Force, and I hope our neighbors understand this and that it's time to make peace. With a strong Air Force like ours, they can't mess with us.
We came here to see the flyover. Every year our tradition is to come here and see the flyover. We've done this since childhood. My father used to bring me to watch it, and I kept coming to watch it all my life.
Erica Jackson there, our I-24 News correspondent from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. Well, we have reports today of early morning clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police, including within the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This as Jewish worshippers are allowed to visit the compound after visiting approval was renewed. With today being the morning of Independence Day, dozens of young Palestinians were seen trying to get closer to the Jewish visiting groups. The rioters also throwing rocks at officers repulsed by police who entered the compound before Israeli forces dispersed them with tear gas. Well, Palestinians were heard shouting chants in Arabic, including "God is great" and "with spirit, with blood, we will redeem Al-Aqsa," just as Jewish visitors passed by. One police officer was lightly injured in the clashes. The scuffles coming just a week after the last Friday of the month of Ramadan, during which hundreds of worshippers also violated orders and confronted security forces on the Temple Mount. Moving on to Ukraine now, with President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday saying that he had held fruitful negotiations with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett during a phone call. The discussions over the scandalous remarks earlier this week by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who said Nazi leader Adolf Hitler had Jewish blood. Zelensky also tweeting that he had updated Bennett on the fight against Russia and about the critical situation in Mariupol. Well, later on as well, and according to Reuters, Zelensky addressed the Ukrainian people, saying the two leaders had also discussed the scandalous and completely unacceptable remarks by Lavrov. Ties between Israel and Russia have frayed in recent days after those claims by Lavrov. Well, that's all we have time for now from the news desk, but we are bringing you more of the latest news from across this region and around the globe. And for now, though, you can follow us. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and we're also on